I always struggle with, written policies that are on some confluence somewhere and expecting that everyone has read all of them and that they're going to remember, right? That's just not likely. You have to have them for lots of reasons, and they certainly have their purpose. But, for the people that are actually the doers, that are doing things in their daily life, I think putting those guardrails in to where it's actually going to limit you, and it's actually in the code, makes things a lot more likely that they're going to go the way that you want as a security professional versus just hoping that somebody read the document.
Welcome to the Forward Slash, where we lean into the future of IT. I'm your host, Aaron Chesney, with my beautiful co-host, James Carmen, and our special guest today, David Imhoff from Kroger. Why don't you introduce yourself, David?
Hi, guys. So I'm Dave Imhoff. I'm the application security, product security leader for Kroger. Spend most of my time living right in between the engineering world and the security world, making sure that our applications and our products in general are secure.
Hey, Kroger, you guys have it's like a little grocery store kind of thing going on
Oh
there?
yeah, it's just there's a couple of them, in your neighborhood. It's you may not have heard of it.
Yeah. Well, keep it up. You guys will do fine. How did you get to, we've talked in the past, Dave, but kind of tell us how did you get from, I know you've done been engineering manager, but how did security come to be kind of your area of interest?
So I spent most of my career at General Electric. That was great because I got to see a lot of different, parts of the business, parts of IT. And it was great to figure out what I did not want to do, right? Which is a whole lot easier than figuring out what you do want to do. That's really the hard part. I was always really interested in um, how do you actually lock some of this stuff down, right? I spent a lot of time in storage and backup. Did some SAP implementations, but I really always wondered, how do we prevent things from doing the things that they're not supposed to do, and how do we keep people kind of following the happy path, right? So I left GE and did something kind of similar at CBTS for a little bit, ran their managed services practice. When I was over there, security started getting hotter and hotter, right? I really wanted to create more of a managed security practice there. Uh, we did patching, we did some things like that. It was nothing like they have now, right? They have a great security program now. But as security was heating up, I got a call from some of my friends that were still at GE, and they had just received quite a bit of funding. They were really starting to move from, security equals compliance to a much more evolved, how do we respond to APT threats? Let's really beef up the program. And that was really interesting to me. So I jumped at the chance to go back there and really kind of, dive headfirst into security in general. Started out, it was a great opportunity to learn, but I wanted to bring something valuable too. So I started out really managing and running their security tools team, right? So we had a lot of things. There's third-party products for about everything now, but that wasn't really true at that point in time. So I knew a lot about infrastructure and how to stand that up, how to lead that, and how to build things out. So I was doing that while I was really soaking up a lot of great knowledge from really some of the smartest people and the best security practitioners I've ever met. So that just kind of made me fall in love with security. From there, I took a lot of different roles. My role expanded and kind of morphed a little bit into a couple different things. I led security ops for a bit, intel, detect, response, in addition to the tools teams. Took on more of the compliance side. At some point, I would love to be a CISO, right? So I was working for Denise DeFiore at the time when she was at Aviation, and we were just starting the BISO program in general. So that was really a clear way to kind of learned security as a whole, right? Because it's when you're really trying to get a lot more um, advanced and really partner with the business, you have to understand the risk and compliance component. That's the language that they speak, right? Um, you know, DFIR is cool and everything like that, but if you really want to partner with them and kind of get into that upper echelon of leadership, you have to be able to talk risk. So that was a great learning for me. Um, then I then I went to Fifth Third and uh, led their software engineering team for Fifth Third Digital. That was, I skipped the part where I led software engineering at GE for a little bit there. But that was an interesting time. I do really like building things as well. So, that was a really nice way to, build something that was direct to customer. I had never done that before, right? It was really B2B, not B2C. So living in that world and helping kind of evolve that Fifth Third Digital organization was great. But what I really started to realize was, man, I really miss security and the strategic components of that, and really helping folks understand risk and constantly learning on how to stay ahead of the evolving threat. So here I am at Kroger, just trying to make sure that we are looking in all the places we need to look, assessing the threats we need to assess, and communicating that effectively to make sure that our Kroger leadership really understands and can react to the risks that we face.
So there's a couple things you mentioned in there that I'm unfamiliar with. So in for those at home, they may not understand it because a lot of us don't live in the security world. What's an APT attack?
Oh yeah, so APT is advanced persistent threat, right? Um, those are really your highly skilled, highly motivated, usually highly compensated in some way or another uh, groups that create really effective, very targeted attacks uh, toward either your business's crown jewels. Really, they will find a way to figure out what they need to extract from you or what they want to do to you. And if you think about the kind of the rating system, you kind of have script kiddies at the bottom, right? That's just people that know how to use Metasploit. They can download Kali Linux, they can press a couple buttons. If a website is just incredibly vulnerable, they can quote hack it, right? APT threats are all the way at the top of that list, where they're almost always state sponsored. They know exactly what they're looking for. They have a plan, and the P in APT is persistent. They are not going to stop.
So they're kind of like the mob level organized crime,
Sure.
echelon of digital security. All right, and then another one you mentioned was it VSO or CISO?
BISO, Business Information
VSO.
Security Officer. Yeah. So that role, that's generally a role that kind of sits right in between and is really in deep partnership with a business line or a business unit, um, to where you are the security person, right? It's usually a very senior role where you understand security and risk in general, but you are really embedded into their business. So you really understand um, what they're trying to accomplish, from their point of view, right? What are the big company initiatives? What is that worth, right? Because risk is always a trade-off decision, right? Is this idea worth $500 or $500 million? And they really partner with the business to make sure that um, they understand the risk that they could be taking, um, how to mitigate that, right? Because there's always a better way to go about something. And then they're also really kind of the liaison, right, to make sure that you don't end up with security in its own silo, right? Which is, the bigger the company, the easier that is for that to happen, right? So they're kind of the liaison to remind the security organization in general, hey, I hear what you're saying, right? That's a great idea in general, but this business line needs X, Y, and Z, right? Or have you thought about A, B, and C? It's kind of a check and balance, right? To make sure that things are, yes, very secure, but are also going to work for the business in general, because that's ultimately why businesses exist, unless you're a security company, right?
Sure. So those typically would, hold on, maybe they would report into the business unit itself, not to the CISO.
They usually report into the CISO, but
Oh,
I have seen it the other way as well.
okay.
Um, it's one of those things where I think that goes right along with kind of the conversations around where should the CISO report, right? Should
Mm,
it be to the CEO? Should it be to a chief security risk officer? Um, that kind of follows that same line of thinking, I think, is okay, this is really business risk, right? It's not just technology risk, it's business risk. So where do you put them? But right now, I've seen them almost always report to the CISO.
okay.
So is the career ladder ASO, BSO, CISO? What's that?
But
I'm assuming the CISO is that C-level executive for security, right?
you got it, right?
Yeah.
That's the leader.
Okay, the last one I have is DFIR.
Yeah. So forensics, incident response, right? So that is something has happened. We need to respond, right? It's really detective work. To be honest, that's my absolute favorite part about
Yeah.
security. I don't get to do any of that anymore, but um, that is, I mean, you really are, you're using technology, but you really are acting as a detective in every sense of the word, right? You're looking at human behavior, you're looking at motive, you're looking at literally the forensics of what has happened, the events, things like that. Um, that is that's a really cool but very high burnout area in security. A lot of times when you hear people talk about security burnout, it's people that are in the SOC, right, the Security Operations Center, that because incidents don't stop, right, and they're never going to. So that's hard work, but it's at least to me that's one of the most that and like the Intel, lead role or the Intel team that gathers intel and does threat attribution, right? Who did these things? Those are the absolute coolest part of security. Um, but yeah, it's you can only get so far with a board or the C-suite by continuing to perform kind of a shock and awe campaign, right? When incidents happen all the time, right, it kind of loses its luster, right? So you really have to kind of evolve that and talk about risk.
I think this is going to be like one of those new um, cop drama series is the DFIR, it's
Yeah.
like coming to the Liberty Broadcasting Network in this fall.
Dun,
DFIR,
dun.
DSI.
Yeah. The funny thing, one of the consistent memes that gets spread around is I don't know if you guys watch NCIS, but there's the incredibly cringy scene where two of them are using the same keyboard to fight the hacker. Like that. It does poke up. It pops up in culture every once in a while. But yeah, usually in ways like that.
Yeah, I love, the Hollywood um, interfaces that are used to, hack systems
Oh
and
yeah,
do that
yeah.
kind of thing. It's just it's just amazing. I'm like, that's not how that works. Like the interface for Jurassic Park, where it was all like 3D, and they're like, no, that's not how
Yeah,
their
it definitely
operation
it
actually
definitely
works.
does not look like that.
I think the most accurate one was probably War Games from the 80s. They actually, there was some things that they had to actually change in security because they were a little too accurate. like when he short circuited the phone to get a call through.
Hmm.
They actually had to go through and replace payphones. And those for you that don't know, there used to be phones on the corners of different city blocks that you could go to and use for some change.
I've got a trivia question for you. What do you remember? What the password for the Whopper, that DoD computer that he hacked, was?
Joseph.
Joshua.
Oh,
Very
Joshua.
Joshua.
close.
Ah,
Joshua.
Joshua.
Yeah.
That's right. It was it was his kid. It was the back door.
That's right.
The backdoor password. Joshua. Would you like to play a game of chess?
If you can frustrate a computer enough playing tic-tac-toe,
That's right.
it'll start
Lord.
thermonuclear war. So
Stop
that's how it works.
thermonuclear war, because it
That's
started
true. You
running the
frustrate them.
permutations of the thermonuclear war, going, oh, there's no winner.
He gives up. Yeah.
The
It's
only
a
way to
zero-sum
win is
game.
not to play.
Right.
All right. So you mentioned a lot of really cool things, forensics and all of this stuff. And a lot of times I ask folks like, what is like the biggest for you when maybe you saw an incident that happened and you were like, what? I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, what is one of the strangest things you've encountered in your career as being in security?
Besides
Oh
us.
man, that's a good. Oh, okay. Then let me think.
Let me think a little bit then.
That's a really good question. So there was one time, I won't name where I was, but um, we were reverse engineering a payload, and we realized, and I don't know if it was just a mistake. Uh, it was basically malware that was dropped from a spearfish, right? So a spearfish is a very targeted fish, right? So person clicks a link, they click link, malware, or at least a malware dropper, gets onto the computer, phones home, pulls the rest of the package down. So usually that package that gets pulled down is something that you're going to alert on that is, I mean, it's basically a hacker's toolkit, right? In this case, and it really threw us for a loop. I swear I think it's just a mistake, but what it pulled down was an MP3 of the song Mockingbird by the Beatles. So I don't know why that happened. I think that's the Beatles, isn't it?
I only think of like Jim Carrey in Dumb and Dumber when they're going mock
Oh
see.
yeah, not that.
Not that one. Okay, sorry,
No,
not that
but
song.
it was
The
weird.
only
I
one
think
I'm
they
thinking
just.
of Blackbird.
Yeah.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night.
Oh no, it was Black. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's Blackbird.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we think it was just an absolute mistake, right? That instead of, I mean, they're people too, right? They make mistakes. But yeah, we just pulled down a song, and we looked at it to see if maybe there was something embedded in it. There, by all indications, there was not, and it was just odd. Kind of threw us a little bit.
That's it's kind of like I'm surprised it wasn't like a Rick Ashley song that they pulled down.
Like
And it
Rick
was like,
rolled.
yeah, Rick rolled, yeah.
See, that would make more sense.
Right?
Yeah.
At least I was like, oh, that's funny. But we've got a security hole, so that's not funny.
Never gonna give you back your database till you pay some cash to release it. Oh, never mind. Sorry.
You should
Oh,
you should record that and make it a single.
Yeah,
there
I
you go.
should. I'll write out. I'll have ChatGPT write me all the words to it. So
That's a good idea.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
actually use Suno. It'll
I love
put
Suno.
music to it.
Yeah.
I love it too. I've done a bunch of stuff. I actually wrote my wife a song on between GPT and Suno. I actually wrote her a pretty cool song.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You want to sing it now? Just
No.
Yeah, let's hear it.
kidding.
Well,
Go ahead.
I could
Go.
play it for you. I have it downloaded, but
Oh no.
actually I can't because I haven't. Wait, I haven't paid for the commercial license, so I can't rebroadcast it.
Yeah.
So, so okay, moving on to the topic at hand. So, in your day to day and that kind of thing, what is one of the things that you find difficult to do um, with your position and the responsibilities? Like, you said you're working with trying to set up security like standards and making sure everybody's compliant. So what are some of the issues you run into with that?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you two of them. Um, First is kind of an easy one, right? It's not going to be that surprising. Um, we have a lot of software developers, right? Um, Making contact and finding the time to spend with them, you know, just to get your message out and to make sure that they know where to look for instructions and guidelines and things like that in order to do the right thing. That's a challenge in itself. But when you get people to do what you want them to do, right, which is ask questions, come to you, when they're not sure if they should do something or not, you know, you would like to be there to help them and walk them through the why, so they learn next time, right, and maybe they can teach other people. You know, what we are, the ratio is just very askew, right? I mean, it's basically like 4 to 3,000. Um, so it's very, very hard to make contact, stay in contact, and really partner with the engineering community in general at a level that I would like to, where I think we should be able to, just due to sheer size. And the other one is finding, it's such a fine balance between helping engineering teams code securely and understand how to do that, and helping make things secure by design for them so it's easy to do the right thing, um, versus being overly prescriptive, getting in the way too much, slowing things down, and unnecessarily making things cumbersome for them, right? And that is a really, really hard thing. There is no right answer. That's on a continuum, right? That's constantly kind of a floating point that moves around, and you really just kind of have to understand all the context that you're in when you're talking about a project or a product or a team's deliverable. Um, that's where it takes a lot of understanding on what they're trying to do and why, so that you can apply the correct amount of security, right? Because you don't want to secure things more than you need to, and you certainly don't want to under secure things. So, like a lot of things in life, that's a hard thing to figure out how to balance.
Yeah, I've run into some situations where the balance was skewed. I worked at I don't know if you remember Earthlink, the ISP.
Oh yeah,
I was working there, and it was more secure from internal usage than it was from external. So it was
yeah,
easier to get into systems externally than it was from on premises. And I was just like, this seems like security done backwards. Um, and it was very frustrating at times because we had to access servers and in lower environments and that kind of thing, and just had issues all over the place. Um,
yeah. It's really easy to get kind of tunnel vision, when you're in security,
yeah.
uh, because you're trying to give consistent advice, and you're trying to make sure that things are um, secure, obviously. But it can be really easy to lose sight of the bigger picture when you're really in the details all the time. So, that's not surprising that happened, right? Sometimes you just get blind spots and you don't even realize it.
Yeah, and it's got to be hard too because you are trying to like protect. I think what did you call them? The crown jewels
Yeah,
of the company, right? And sometimes that internal threat is worse than an external threat on those kinds of things, especially depending, because if you've got, people that have the wrong level of access and that kind of thing. I was just listening to uh, Joe Rogan's podcast, and they were talking about someone he knew that had like high level security clearance, and typed in a search for little green men just being funny. The next thing you know, like her access gets shut down, and they're like pulling her in and questioning her. It's like, why did you put that in? And the conspiracy theorists out there all going, oh, because they're hiding stuff. It's Area 51. They got her. Oh no, it's like they're covering it up. When it really is, you misused your security clearance to do something stupid, right? And so that I kind of get that, but I thought that was kind of interesting that the internal threat there was actually um, more dangerous than an external one. Now, there was another thing that you mentioned too, and we talked a little bit about this in our pre-interview with this idea of DevSecOps, and you kind of
Hmm.
alluded to it a little bit with that designing things so that it's easy to do the right thing, which leads to like that DevOps type of philosophy of shifting things left. So how do you do that with security? How do you shift things left with security?
Yeah, so good question. To me, a defect is a defect, right? So shift left quality has been here for a long time. I mean, it's a lot easier to catch something in a unit test if you're a software engineer than to realize when things have already gone through performance and now you're in regression testing or UAT that, you know, oops, we need to refactor this whole application. Now we have to have a change and pull it back out. Exact same thing with security defects, right? Um, you know, where I would absolutely love everybody to focus, right, is as far as left as possible, which is, there are a lot of plugins that are right in your IDE. There are a lot of command line interface, things that you can do where, you know, as you are programming, just like with linting and anything else, right? It's going to give you red squiggly lines underneath, the thing that you weren't supposed to do that needs attention, right? It is a whole lot easier and less frustrating and cheaper for everyone if while you're programming you see, oh, you just brought in this really old version of, the Spring framework, right? You, you should use this version, right? Just changing that text costs nearly nothing, um, versus you get all the way through the process and you've got a production release and, the worst case, it gets out there and now it's vulnerable. But, best case is a lot of people have been involved in testing. A lot of people have put time in that, and now you need to go all the way back. Um, you'll see numbers. Some of them sound crazy, um, but if you look at Gartner, Forrester, a lot of those, like, generally, I mean, you're talking at least 200x the cost to fix a vulnerability that has made it to prod versus in your IDE or in your pipeline. So some of the things, right, that you really should do that we do here, and most people do, right, is those IDE plugins are key. Um, a little bit to the right of that is your CI/CD pipeline. So whatever you use, right, Jenkins, GitHub Actions, whatever, um, making sure that that is going to hit a security tool, right? Hopefully SCA and SAST both. Um, so, um, you want to make sure that your open source dependencies are up to date, right? The SCA tool will catch that. SAST is your, oops, it looks like we think there might be a SQL injection here. Or this might be cross-site scripting vulnerable, things like that. You want to make sure that as you are committing to your branch, that right in there you see what those issues might be, right? You don't want to roll that into a prod branch and release it, if you don't need to. So there's multiple checkpoints along the way that you can use, but that's generally what we want to do. And with that, right, kind of underscoring the whole thing is making sure that people understand why um, they're doing these things, right, and how to fix it. Because if they just keep making the same mistake and having to fix it over and over again, that's a lot worse than helping people understand. And all these tools give great feedback now, right? They'll give you, most of them give examples, you know, hey, we found this in public GitHub. Here's where somebody fixed a vulnerability just like this. Like they're really moving into learning tools versus just, hey, this is bad, fix it, which is what they used to be. Right now it's, and if you pay attention, you know, as you're fixing it, hopefully you have time, right? I know not every software engineer has a whole lot of time, most do not, but if you really pay attention, you can learn quite a bit from just the guidance that you find in there.
Yeah, I always tell folks one of my best teaching tools for a team is Sonar Cube because, you know,
Yeah.
it'll tell you what you're doing wrong. If you click on it and read, it'll say this is what you're doing wrong. This is a good example of what good looks like. I love that tool. It does a great job there. One of the things, like you mentioned, you know, I'm a Java developer, so you know, Spring that hit a vein there a little bit. I've noticed recently, even when I bring in like the latest version of Spring Boot and all of that in my IDE, CVE, blah blah blah. Like, how do you judge that? It's like the boy who cried wolf for me. Sometimes it's like, okay, yeah, that's a vulnerability, but if I dig in, I spend a half an hour, 45 minutes, and really dig, and I'm like, yeah, I don't use that part of because it's such a vast library. There's so many attack surfaces but I don't use that. I'm not using XML, you know, that kind of stuff, or whatever the case may be, and I just ignore it. So now I've gotten to the point where I've got a bad habit. I'm just like, forget about that stuff. I'm not even able to dig into it because it takes too darn long. How do you balance that?
So that's a great question. So the space is evolving pretty rapidly because of things exactly like that, right? Um, the gold standard, at least for me, like and where I would love to get to, is a point where, you know, it's kind of like a graph that kind of drops off, right? A lot of so there's a space that exists. It's still kind of evolving. It's called ASPM, Application Security Posture Management. You know, it's more, you know, acronyms and security tools of things that are, you know, combining, you know, not combining, you know how that goes. But application security posture management is really answering the question that you just asked, right, with context. So it's more intelligently putting together context around what you're looking at. So, you know, ideally, the tool or tools can show reachability, right? Is this function even reachable, right? So there could be a vulnerability that is not possible to exploit because that function cannot be called anywhere in that code because it doesn't exist, right? Then there's visibility. So are you actually able to hit this externally, right? Can something see this, or, you know, have you most likely covered that through another defense in depth strategy where it's behind a couple things, network segmented, you know, all those things. So, you know, and then you are able to, now at really big scale, this is hard to do without a more comprehensive strategy, but especially for like small, medium businesses, a lot of times in these tools, you can mark the criticality um, of each like repo right in the tool. So it will also give you some intelligence to say, okay, you've also marked this as a critical repo in general, right? So you kind of combine all those factors so that you can really look at things that are actually important, because and it's always been the problem, right? Same thing with quality tools, right? Separating the signal from the noise is very, very hard, and it people do get very numb to, you know, if all of a sudden you run a project and it has 5,000 vulnerabilities, you're not going to go in and fix two of them. It's just, that's not human nature, right? You're going to say, oh geez, well, I can't fix all of those, so I guess this is just going to be bad, right? Like, I mean, that's not great, but the way that is how people think. But if you can cut that down to 10 actual critical vulnerabilities that are really actually posing risk, then you can fix 10, right? Um, and you shouldn't just ignore those because it has all the context to tell you definitively, or as close to it as it can, that hey, these are actual threats, right? That you should do something about versus just a hypothetical. Well, this might be, vulnerable. I don't know.
Okay. I think Spring
Um,
Boot, just because of all the optional dependencies, there's so many things that could be reachable if you pull in one dependency. If you pull in JSON, there's all this other crap. You know what I mean? Like that. And yeah, I don't know. It just causes a big, huge web and false signals all the time. Hit or miss.
All the transitive dependencies makes that extremely, extremely hard, right?
Yeah.
oh, I
And,
spent
and
days
that
trying to
is
find them.
right. And with with PCI 4, you have to provide an SBOM, right? A software bill of materials. I think that's going to come for a lot more things, right? Because I don't know, what is it? Probably 90% of code out there is composed of open source libraries and dependencies that people pull in. It's just the way it is. But SBOMs are basically enumerating your POM file, right, for Java project and telling you what's in there. And then you start having to interpret that and figuring out, is it reachable? Does it have transitive dependency? So that whole space, I think, it's absolutely growing, right? Because you see, all of the massive third party compromises that happen, like SolarWinds, right? Where regulators are getting a lot more serious about that, and just general security practitioners, right? It concerns me a lot too. But yeah, it's a hard problem.
Yeah, I've dropped some S bombs while dealing with this stuff. So.
I believe you.
Lots of them. Yeah.
So one of the things that you had mentioned was these IDE and CI/CD tools for detecting vulnerabilities early on. What are kind of your go-to tools for those listening at home that may want to shift their security focus left?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a couple industry leaders, right? Sneak, Veracode. Those are two big ones there.
What was that
Um,
second one?
Veracode.
Veracode?
Yeah. Both of those tools do pretty well on, SCA and SAS findings. There are a ton out there, but those are the two that I've seen. There's also check marks, that's used in a lot of shops, right? So, most of those tools, they're they're pretty comparable, right? A lot of them can get you where you want to go. It just, and especially with, what I mentioned around the ASPM space, I think a lot of it is going to depend on, what does your environment look like, and um, how much context are you looking for, and how quickly do all those companies, you know, either acquire or create that capability, uh, to provide that context,
And
right?
these tools are mainly used in CI/CD or IDE?
Um, all the above.
All the above. So they've got like
Yeah,
plugins for your IDE, and then when you run it through your CI/CD, it kind of does like a final check as well.
yeah, you got it, right. And then there's, I mean, you want to ideally you want to make sure you have a DAST scanner too, right? Some
Oh, I'm
some
sorry, a
kind of
what
dynamic
scanner?
DAST, DAST, so dynamic application security testing. So SCA and SAS they look at your source code itself, right, and glean what it can from it. Um, DAST, a lot of times you get a lot more false positives, right? It's a little more cumbersome, but DAST is actually going to view it as run, so that, um, you really get a view of, oh, geez, when this is actually built, it pulls in this other thing that wasn't necessarily in the source code, and the way that other thing is configured, opens up this vulnerability or this, attack vector. You want to make sure you have a comprehensive tool set there. And then,
Now,
if you've got APIs, which literally everyone does, right? API security, API runtime security is a pretty hot space. A lot of times those will sit on your gateway. They'll intercept traffic. They'll look at the request responses and the payloads, and you know, they are looking for issues and or attacks on those APIs themselves.
So that raises an interesting question, because I've done a lot of API development myself and have had to deal with these security tools and things like that. And one of the things that like kind of gets me is like, well, don't I have all the security I need from my gateway that's authenticating the request coming in ahead of time, to where I'm only getting exposed to my upstream services that are calling me because it's not publicly available?
I mean, so the authentication and auth, yes, but there are a whole lot of other attack vectors once you get past that, right? So if it's visible, or if somebody gets a foothold and it can become visible to them, then you want to make sure you understand it. And they do a lot more than just this is a security vulnerability. They also do a lot of you can start to understand what data is exposed through those APIs, so that you can kind of keep track. They're great for an inventory tool, where they'll tell you like, hey, it looks like you know API A, B, and C are handling PHI data, right? They're looking through the request response, and they can look at that JSON, and you know kind of infer that, oh geez, that looks like a social security number. We should put an alert in here, right? So it's really the overall security posture of the APIs themselves, not just can it get hacked or not, but how secure is this thing, and do you really understand what this thing is doing?
Cool.
So let's maybe do a thought experiment here. Let's assume this. What was it, Kroger? You said it was. It's this little grocery thing that you got going on. Let's assume this takes off. Let's assume it
Sure.
becomes a big
Okay.
thing someday.
We'll see.
And money is no object, and you can build your organization and your team and everything just the way you want. Like, what does that nirvana look like for you from an organizational standpoint? How do you support those teams the best? Because you mentioned it's 4 to 3,000 ratio. How would you structure that if you just had all the money you could spend? How would you go about it?
So money itself won't buy it, right? I would start with having somebody, much like the BISO model we talked about earlier. I would start by making sure that I had one person for every single pillar, business unit, however the organization is divided, and you call those, organizational constructs what they are. I would make sure I had at least one person dedicated to each of those to really be embedded into. The hardest part is being involved when they're doing, ideation, right? Like, not a lot of people think, hey, let's invite security to this brainstorming meeting where we're talking about designing this new architecture, right? But if you had somebody embedded who really their incentive is to help the teams get done what they're trying to get done, but just do it in a safe way, or at least consult and raise where it's not safe, so that the leadership can make a judgment call on that, right, or and ask for an exception. Then it's going to be a lot easier, right? So just having somebody that's actually, and I mean, they sit in that business unit, they go to all the staff meetings in that business unit. For all intents and purposes, they are part of that business unit. Um, Honestly, even better than that, um, they would have a peer that's basically kind of a two in the box that actually is in that engineering organization, that's dedicated to application security itself, that is 100% part of the engineering team, engineering organization, whatever, um, so that you have kind of a working team of the actual security side of the house that's embedded, and the actual engineering side of the house that is also dedicated, right? So that would go a long way. And then there are security champion programs, right? That is a great way to do kind of a train the trainer approach. You find folks that aren't necessarily security people, right, and aren't in security, but generally they, the most successful ones look like somebody that is kind of ready for a stretch assignment, looking for something more, or they are kind of more senior and they want to be challenged a little bit more, things like that. Um, or they might just want to dip their toe in security and see if it's something that's interesting to them because they've been around application code and they know that that's kind of the next thing in a lot of cases. Um, the Security Champion program is fantastic. What I see happen a lot, right, is those people, they're not directly incented on what they're doing in the Security Champion program. They are on the engineering teams and they're incented to deliver business features or, at best non-functionals, right? So it's making sure that every leader of the organizations that those folks are in correctly incentivizes those people, really understands, but more than anything is really bought in, right? They've got to believe in it. They've got to actually support those people, and they can't let um, non-security work just totally take all the air out of the room, right? Because it will absolutely do that if left unattended. There's never any shortage of features that need to get developed for the business. So those would be the two things that I would really do is, it's dedicated people that are truly embedded with, a counterpart in those organizations, and B, real clear incentivization, sponsorship, and agreement from every one of those leaders that the people that are in their quote security champions, right, that are in that program, that are kind of friends of security, are not being asked to do other things that just eventually take over 100% of their work.
I like that thought you mentioned about the balance of work too. It's like you don't want to not think about security, but you don't want it to overtake your project either. Similar to things like accessibility or design or any of these other things that can just snowball and get out of control, and the next thing you know, oh, we've shut everything down because we're solving tech debt, right? And it's like we can't operate that way. We can't continue to add value, so we've got to keep everything kind of in balance. All, like if you're juggling all these balls at the same time, you want to keep them all in the air and keep everything moving forward. And I think it's a good message to have, is that you try and keep all of your different channels of development moving forward at a steady pace so that one doesn't stack up and topple your project. So
Yeah,
it's a very good
yeah,
message
that
there.
and I've we touched on it a little bit, but like I've spent several years leading engineering teams themselves, right, directly. That is the hardest thing in the world to do, right? Because um, you really kind of do get death by a thousand paper cuts as a software engineer, because the demand, everything wants to shift left, right? And the demand on you, right? There's never any shortage of features, and there's never a timeline that is, totally reasonable, right? That's just not the way that the world usually works. So your delivery is always, at 100% at least, right? And you have to keep moving. But then at the same time, and I truly believe that most developers, they want to do the right thing. I don't think that anybody is trying actively not to do, secure development, but it's really making the space and the time for them to tackle, right? It's hard enough just to tackle the non-functionals, right? I can't tell you how many times, at every company I've been at, and I'm sure everybody listening to this podcast and you guys have seen, where it's, listen, we just need to get that out. I promise we're going to make a user story and we're going to come back and fix that, right? It it happens sometimes where you fix it, right? But you're constantly fighting to remind people, hey, remember, yes, we went to market with that feature, but you still owe me, this amount of time from this team because we have to fix this thing or it will come back and bite us, right? And or it will at least slow us down as we look to make new features. Um,
And with certain parts of the
security is another one of
organization,
those things.
each you know, if you're working on kind of a flagship product, you got different parts of the organization asking for things at the same time. You got marketing asking for this so that they compete with, Acme company down the road. And then you've got your sales guys that are saying, hey, I can sell a lot more of this if I have this feature. And then you've got your business analyst saying we really need this, and you've got um, your security and your operations, and all these people want something done. Plus, you've got defects and tech debt, so you're getting all these multiple channels of incoming work. And if you absolutely need to have somebody at the helm, filtering that out, prioritizing that stuff, and keeping it in balance so that okay, we're going to please everybody. It's not going to be on it may not be on the timelines that you want it, but we are going to get to it. And this is how, and you can show that out. And it helps quiet that noise of, I need to have it, or we're going to do that later and never get around to it. Right. So,
Yeah,
and that's that's definitely, you're right. It's absolutely one of the hardest things. And if you don't have somebody filtering that for you, it is death by a thousand paper cuts because you're
yeah,
trying to please everyone. Because as developers, that's our that's what we like to do. We is produce something that makes people happy, and
right.
and we're always it's very hard for developers to say no because in their mind they're like, yeah, I could do that. I can do that. I
Mm-hmm.
can make that happen. That's something in my wheelhouse that I can say yes to. But where it breaks down is they don't have the time to do that, and it
Yep.
just and then they say yes to everybody, and then then you've got this giant amount of work on your hands. Like, I can't make anybody happy now
Yeah.
because I've said yes to everyone.
Dylan got
And
to see me do that dance firsthand for 2 years, so
so
he can tell you how well or not well I did at that.
It's interesting that the kind of the stuff you're talking about, like education is the key, right? But our industry seems to have and I think it kind of came with the DevOps movement a little bit of like you build it, you run it. So like a software developer doesn't just sit down clackety clack on a keyboard and writing Java code. Now I need to know Kubernetes. Now I need to know networking. I need to know all of these things. And they're like, well, we just have the developers do it. And in some sense, that accountability, yeah, it's a lot of stuff to know, and there's no way, that you could be the jack of all trades and the ace of none, right? So, how do you get people that are really good at software engineering, but then cover all these things? So I think there's been a little bit of from the industry, a little bit of a backlash on that whole. You build it, you run it, and people are wanting to go back into like specialization. So it's going to be an interesting where we settle on that pendulum. That the industry thinks, okay, this is the right blend, this is the right balance, and maybe it's not the same for every team, but there is. It seems like that pendulum is swinging back a little bit. It's just an interesting observation.
so I'm going to make an abrupt change of topic.
All right.
Oh, wonderful! Yes.
Swerve.
Let's talk about ship it or skip it.
Ship or skip, everybody we gotta tell us if you ship or skip.
All right. Remind me how to play this.
So you're either going to answer ship it or skip it. Those are the rules.
I can
We're gonna
figure
get it's very simple. It's a very simple game to play. We're gonna throw out a couple ideas, concepts, or products that we'll discuss, and we'll each vote on whether we believe it is something we should ship, meaning we use it all the time, or yes, implement it in your day-to-day life, or skip it. Don't worry about this thing, just forget about it, right?
Gotcha.
So, so one of the first things that I want to bring up, and this was when we were talking about, is white hat pen testing. Because as you were talking, I was thinking about this. I'm like, yeah, white hat pen testing. What do you think on that topic? Is that a ship it or a skip it?
Is the white hat part of the actual company itself, or are you talking about like bug bounties?
Which way do you want to answer it? Which way does it change your answer if it's like a contracted white hat versus an in-house white hat?
No, I think ship it on both of them, honestly. Tools can get you so far, but if you have something that's super critical, you really want somebody touching that thing and really trying to break it that has done that before, right? That has a human brain and not just an algorithm.
James, what about you?
As a back end developer, I hate when people say we have to do pen testing, but I understand, and I think it's a necessary evil. I think that I would say ship it as well.
So for me, I say ship it with the caveat is that it's not a black hat converted to white hat, right? Because I don't agree with the ethics of black hatting somebody to get a white hat position. So
Yeah, I don't like that either. No.
It's like that guy, the
Okay.
Catch Me If You Can movie, and now he's
yeah,
like a
Oh yeah.
security analyst for
Frank
the government.
Abagnale.
right,
Abagnale,
Yeah.
the Abagnale model. Yeah.
right. So that's where I draw the line. It's like, okay, you don't break the law to get a job. That's just not the way you do things.
That's like the old mafia, Oh, you got a nice website here. It sure would be bad if
Yeah.
something were to happen to it.
Data protection.
It's like,
Yeah.
like if I were to hit this key here and get all of your personal data, that would be unfortunate.
That's right.
I love it.
All right. What's our next one?
Oh, let's do it. We mentioned this earlier, the software bill of materials.
Yeah. Ship it. That is more and more critical, especially as a consumer of products, right? Uh, I want to know what you used to build that product, because when I see something, on dark reading or CSO, that says that, hey, there's a horrible 0 day in this library or this dependency, things like that, I want to be able to go back and look at, what was in the recipe of all the products I bought, so that then I can go back to them and say, hey, show me what you did about this, right? Have you actually done something about this? Because otherwise you're blind, right? And you've got things running that are vulnerable in your environment and you're not sure where.
Yeah, I'd have to say ship it as well. I think, and I've said this for a long time. I think something like Maven and the dependency management has been like a huge boon to the Java world. Like the fact that we have structured dependencies. I'm very like, I don't know. I'm weird about SBOM stuff. I actually wrote one for a project we were doing that was I didn't trust the one that you can spit out with Maven, right? So it'll go through the dependencies and
Right.
spit out the tree and all that. I actually wrote a runtime SBOM. So when you go, you can go to like it was actually an actuator endpoint for Spring Boot, and it would go through and scan the class path, all the jar files, and say this is the actual class path I am running on right now, and try to introspect all the jars and say this is Commons Lang 3 and this is this and these versions, and it would spit out the actual runtime jar files from the class. That was pretty cool. I don't know if it differed very much from Maven, but I was very nervous. Like, okay, well, I want to make sure this is accurate. But that was a pretty cool tool. Ship it.
That's awesome.
I'm mostly a ship it. I've used SBOMs in practice, and one of the most frustrating things is when you're like pushing for a release, your SBOM changes, and it breaks something in your code. Right. Because it's like, well, now we got to go in and change this because we're using a centralized SBOM that everybody's using. I've got to update these versions, and now I've got additional work that's impeding my release. So that's kind of the downside of it. But in general, I really do like it when the version updates don't impact me. It's great because I don't have to think about version matching between dependencies and that kind of thing, especially with
Yeah.
like Spring Boot, when you have the, all these different starters and network component pieces and all that have to match. It's great for managing that kind of stuff. It's just when those version changes happen, they get pushed down and it impacts your code. Now you've got extra work. So
Yeah.
I'm
Fair.
a tentative ship it on that, but I do think it's the right direction. I think there just needs to be some little bit of controls in place, or like pre-testing on how this could impact you, or
Yeah.
scheduling a version change on the bomb.
I think the one I'd like to do.
Especially as it relates to some of these vulnerability checks. So, especially like if you're doing an SBOM update because you have a vulnerability in your governance committee is saying, well, you can't release because you've got these vulnerabilities in place, and then you go to update your bomb and it brings down all these new versions, and it breaks your stuff, and now you've got to go back through. It's just it can be.
It's always a good time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because
Oh,
that's somebody who doesn't code and decided this is the dependency you have to use, and yeah, that's always
yeah.
fun.
Yeah, that doesn't always work out.
No. All right, you mentioned something earlier when we were talking about white hat testing. You said somebody like a human being or something. So I thought this one might be interesting. We had it written down. AI for threat detection and remediation. Where do you think? Where's your stance on that?
Skip it.
Skip it. I
It's
figured.
not there yet. I think I'll refine that just a little bit. I think multi-indicator behavioral detection, if you want to call that AI, is critical, right? UEBA, that's critical, right? Because you're looking at a string of events as in a composite risk score. That is great, but if you have a product that's you can just use our chatbot to ask it to do all the things. I just can't see that working right now. That would be great if it worked in the future, but I would not want AI to do anything more than triage at this point. Hopefully get rid of some of the busy work. That part I would like, but I feel like I would want an actual responder to go back and make sure that it did what it did.
Yeah, I'm gonna say skip it as well, because I don't think that if an AI told me that we were all secure, I would completely trust it at this point, given how
Yeah,
new everything is, and whether it actually did a thorough analysis of my system.
right.
But if it did find something, I I would trust that it actually found something. So I think as
That's
like
fair. Yeah,
as a checkbox to say, yeah, we ran an AI thing and it cleared, but that's not the only thing we're going to go by, you know. It- But still, I think I would skip it for now. I think there's other tools out there that are better suited for doing that thing, or going back to the white hat pen testing. If my white hat says, yeah, we're good, I couldn't get into it, I'm going to trust that a heck of a lot more than an AI.
right. 100% agree.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you guys. Skip it for now. I'm just because I don't trust anything, right? So like if you're talking about like generative AI type of an LLM, there's all sorts of things you can do. Putting gunk out there in GitHub as they're scanning through public repositories to put garbage
Hmm.
into the base LLM, and that's
Yep.
an attack vector. So if I'm just relying on AI to do all my threat detection, and somebody pollutes the language model itself, and then they can capitalize on that. That's a problem. And there's no way. I mean, it's just all black magic inside the base LLMs, So I'd say skip it for that. But the one thing I do like, and I've used it, is like the anomaly detection for, and this isn't necessarily threats, but it's if my query is starting to take longer and those sort of things to say like, hey, there's something weird going on with your infrastructure or whatever. Then I think that's interesting to me. But no, I don't think for threats.
Yeah, agree.
I think the last one I want to cover in ship it or skip it is policy as code.
Ship it. Especially when you're talking about like cloud security policy is a big one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Azure has a lot that you can do and restrict with policy in general. It is a whole lot more likely that somebody is actually going to follow policy if it's actually encoded, and the thing that they are doing will or will not allow you to do it per the policy. I always struggle with written policies that are on some confluence somewhere and expecting that everyone has read all of them and that they're going to remember, right? That's just not likely. You have to have them for lots of reasons, and they certainly have their purpose. But for the people that are actually the doers, that are doing things in their daily life, I think putting those guardrails in to where it's actually going to limit you, and it's actually in the code, makes things a lot more likely that they're going to go the way that you want as a security professional versus just hoping that somebody read the document.
So this is where we're going to differ in opinion, I think.
All right.
So I'm going to be skip it because one, I think that it's putting more on the developer's plate in an area where they're not necessarily the expert. Like I'm by no means a security expert, and I'm always nervous when I go in to do policy configurations because am I breaking something? Am I going against, what the security policies are for what I'm trying to do? Do I have enough checks and balances in place? And I always feel like I'm diffusing a bomb. I'm just like, before I snip this wire,
That's fair.
right? Is it the blue one or the red one? Blue or red? Blue or red? Blue or red? Somebody tell me, right? Because I need this to work, but this is in the way, and I think I can, remove it because it's not critical for this part, but I'm not sure. And then so I get this, nervousness about, is it the right thing? And I think when you have like a microservice environment where you've got many implementations of like the same security, that if there is a rolling change, now you have to coordinate a lot of work against a lot of teams in order to update that. Like, and it could be as simple as just, we've moved authenticators, right? We're going from Auth0 to OAuth 2, or vice versa, right? So we're making that wide sweeping security change. So now all of you teams have to go out and change this to the new security model because your security is going to break, your authentication is going to break, given this date. And then you run into the issue of like, well, this project was in maintenance mode, nobody's actively developing on it, and we're going to go in and do that and change that. So for me, I think that having that policy as code for everything is a skip it.
I see your point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm ship it, but I'm, of course, it's with any of these things that are kind of done centrally. And I think this one would only best be done centrally because if there are new things coming in, new threats, and new, all of the things that can happen in our world of security, somebody that's really, really good at that needs to be kind of maintaining that centrally. Now, with that, now comes that abstraction. I'm away from the teams, and of course, every team thinks, "Oh, my application is so special, and we're unique Snowflake. When nobody else does what we do." Well, that's maybe you shouldn't be doing the snowflakey stuff. But anyway, I'm a ship it, but with the caveats. I do think that you need the really smart people that are keeping an eye on the threats that are out there and making sure that the policies are reflective of that and being kept up to date. Otherwise, they're just written once and they're just put off to the side. Okay, we checked that box, and I think they need to evolve. All right, are we ready for our lightning round?
I'm strapped in.
We're looking for short answers, and there's not always a correct answer. It's just more about getting an answer. We'll each give
but
you
there are
5
more
questions.
correct answers for some of them.
Yes,
they are
fair
more
enough.
correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And there are some just wrong answers.
Right.
There might not be just one right answer, but there's definitely some wrong answers in there. So
I hope I pass.
Like
I'll try my
Coldplay
best.
is always the wrong answer, right?
I could, yeah. You're not going to get that answer from me. Don't worry.
I'm
I'll pass
kidding.
on that one.
I'm kidding.
Oh,
All right.
okay.
You
So
want to
we're each
start us
going to
off?
ask you, we're each going to ask you 5 questions. We'll alternate back and forth for a total of 10 questions in the lightning round. Are you ready, sir?
I am. Let's do it.
All right. So question number 1 is, how many hours of sleep do you need?
Ugh, I need 8. Like, I am just an absolute miserable person if I don't get 8. I wish it was less. I used to be able to operate on less, but I have got to get 8.
Okay. And I don't know how our questions are related, but it is. When you fly on a plane, I don't know why you have to specify fly on a plane. I guess there are other ways to fly with like a dirigible or something. But anyway, when you fly on a plane, do you wear a neck pillow?
No, I cannot sleep no matter what on a plane. So a neck pillow is just extra cargo.
Fair. Yeah. I mean, this is one of those where there is a right answer. We would have also accepted yes. In this case.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Have you ever slapped someone in the face? And don't worry, we're not going to press charges.
I don't think I have. Definitely not that I'm going to say on this podcast. So that's a no.
Yeah. How would you rate your karaoke skills on a scale of 1 to Mariah Carey?
Oh, so was that 1 to 1?
Right answer.
I would give my effort a 6 and my talent a 1.
Okay. All right.
On that same vein, make a high-pitched sound.
I'm not going to do that. Just pretend that happened.
Okay. We'll edit one in or something.
All right.
We'll edit in the test beat.
We'll have Skittles. We'll have Skittles do that for you. We can get that's Aaron's
I
bird.
can
Skittles.
make that happen.
Yeah, we'll get Skittles to do that for you.
I love it.
All right. Super Mario Brothers or Zelda?
Oh, Zelda. Zelda all day. That's like my childhood right there.
Yeah,
the gold
nice.
cartridge.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yes. How long can you hold your breath for?
Geez, I don't know that I've tried recently. Probably a minute. Sound
All right, now
about
prove
right?
it.
Probably. Here we go. We'll see if
The timer starts now. Let's see. All right. If the toilet paper roll is really low but not completely out, do you replace it or leave it for someone else?
What am I at home? Well, I guess I would have to be.
Yeah. I think we'll go with home.
I would replace it.
All right. It's an upstanding guy. You probably put away your shopping carts at the grocery store. I
do.
like that. Yeah,
I do.
That's good. That's good.
So I have replaced the ones when in a public restroom too, like sliding the door over so that the next person.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like things to be in their place.
Yes. I think I'm the only one in my house that replaces the toilet paper. Just throwing that out there. Do you believe in Santa Claus?
No, I definitely do not.
I think it's did you ever?
Oh, I did. I read the question wrong.
We go from the same question bank. I saw that one.
Yeah.
Did you ever believe in Santa Claus?
I definitely did believe in Santa. And I was absolutely crushed when everybody at school told me that he didn't exist.
Would you go to a movie alone?
No. I would probably rather find something to watch at home.
Is that 5?
I don't know. I think we got one more round here. Let's do one more round. Back and forth. Polka dots or stripes?
Stripes. I cannot pull off polka dots to save my life.
How many times do you believe you've sneezed in the last 7 days?
Ooh. Oh man, that's a good question. Probably Not a lot, like 6 maybe.
6.
Ugh, you're lucky.
Ragweed season is ending. If you would have asked me this earlier, it would have been in the hundreds.
Yeah, I've been a miserable mess this season, so it's a lot.
And to keep the lawyers happy, Mr. Imhoff's answers to these questions they do not reflect the views of Kroger as a company.
There
Yes.
you go.
They may like Mariah Carey.
Thank you.
We don't know.
Yeah,
we don't
right.
know.
They may. I don't
They
know.
might.
I'm not,
they might.
These are my own
At least the Muzak version. That was my childhood memories of Kroger. Was listening to the Muzak playing as we go down the aisles. It was like, I know that song.
We've kept Mr. Imhoff past the time that we've requested of him, so I want to make sure we're respecting his time here.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think that does it for this episode of the / where we lean into the future of IT. I'd like to thank our guest, Mr. David Imhoff, and my beautiful co-host, James Carmen. Thank you both, gentlemen, and also our production staff as well. Stay tuned for future episodes of the / I am Aaron Chesney. Thank you, and good night.